We've all wondered before if wrestlers really hurt each other in the ring. The answer is yes. It is one of the most dangerous disciplines that exist. WWE superstars take huge risks to offer us a show, but sometimes it can have very serious consequences. It's a pleasure to meet you on the Wrestling Paradise to introduce you to the most shocking injuries in pro wrestling. Are you ready to be shocked to learn how Goldberg has already hurt himself on his own several times? Do you want to know more about Mick Foley's impressive injuries in his iconic Hell in a Cell match against The Undertaker? Do you want to find out why Alberto Del Rio went berserk on Sin Cara when he was injured? And are you curious to learn how Triple H already got a piece of wood in his leg in the middle of a match? You have come to the right place, because in our video we will see together some horrible moments that had huge repercussions on some wrestlers' careers. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, WWE's most shocking injuries. Let's go. At the beginning of the year 2000, we can remember an iconic rivalry. Crazy Mick Foley against Triple H. They really didn't hold back with this hardcore moment at the Royal Rumble, among others.
I could lose an eye, but think of the pop.
Only Mick Foley can be foolish enough to get thumbtacks on his face. At No Way Out, they did it again in a Hell in a Cell that was insane too. There was a good chance that it would happen. One of the two men got injured on this occasion. At the Royal Rumble, Triple H had an excruciating injury. His rival grabbed a pallet and threw him violently on it with a suplex. Except that during the landing, the cerebral assassin takes a piece of wood in his leg. We can imagine his intense pain having such an object sink deep into his calf. When we see the state in which the game ended that day, we can only respect him. It was one of the matches that definitely made him cross a milestone, and later he will become one of the biggest stars in wrestling history. We're at WrestleMania 39. On this day in 2023, there was a Hell in a Cell match between Edge, in one of his last big matches before leaving the company, and Finn Balor, with his special entrance to say the least. As so often in this type of match, there was an injury. Despite the precautions of the modern WWE to make this match much less violent than in the past, the two men are going to have a problem. The moment Edge threw the ladder on him, Finn Balor got it on his head. In the aftermath, he was bleeding and his skull was cut open, while the Federation was trying at all costs to avoid blood in matches. This will lead to a sequence where we will mainly see Edge on the screen, while they will take care of Balor. People simply came in the cage to help him. That's a little weird, since the rule of a Hell in a Cell match is that no one should enter the cage once the match starts. Finn will get some staples and then the match will resume. We can imagine that it was less easy to do all the moves for Balor, but they will manage to finish the match. When we see his skull a few hours later, we realize that it was still a hell of an injury. To continue a match having a lot to think about while having painful injuries, that's really an admirable ability of wrestlers. We're at WrestleMania 30. That year, it was Daniel Bryan's triumph. After months and months in which he had to face adversity, the little bearded man realized his dream and became champion. The company was betting on a wrestler who was not a charismatic bodybuilder, but a passionate and brilliant man in the ring. Unfortunately, they will regret this decision because Daniel Bryan got injured at the worst moment. On Monday Night Raw on April 21, 2014, Bryan was violently attacked by Kane, which would cause damage to his neck. Even if this attack was staged, these physical problems at that precise moment forced the Federation to take the title away from him. In the following years, he will be forced to step away from the ring for a while. That's the cruelty of wrestling. A superstar can work hard for a dream for years, but get injured at the moment of truth and see his success go up in smoke. We're on Raw in August 2013. In this great wind of change, with Randy Orton becoming a villain again and Brock Lesnar on the rise, there was a 100% Mexican match between Sin Cara and Alberto Del Rio. From the very beginning of the match, Alberto wasn't holding back and landed a big kick in his opponent's hand. After that, his fingers weren't doing good, but it will get worse when he throws himself out of the ring. When you look closely, you can clearly see that his finger is crooked. A doctor will come to take care of him. The match will be stopped at Sin Cara's request, who thought he couldn't continue with a dislocated finger. That won't please Del Rio, who clearly didn't like his compatriot. Despite this injury, he will give some very rough kicks to his rival. Even if we imagine his pain well, we can find it much less serious than other injuries in wrestling that hadn't prevented his colleagues from continuing. We remember the 2020 Royal Rumble and the miraculous return of Edge after 9 years of absence. It was one of the most beautiful moments of the decade. But not everything had been idyllic that night. While the rated R superstar had just arrived in the ring, AJ Styles wanted to fight. The two men will exchange blows until the Canadian's spear. We notice it immediately. AJ Styles landed badly and the shock was brutal. It's going to dislocate his shoulder. This injury will cause him an absence of several weeks, but it will not prevent him from facing The Undertaker at WrestleMania 36 a few weeks later. As for Edge, he will have the opportunity to avenge this injury 2 years later, since the two veterans will face each other at WrestleMania 38. The next injury concerns Kevin Owens. Like many other wrestlers, the Canadian was also in trouble because of a moment that took place on October 8, 2018, on Raw. In a match against Bobby Lashley, he will want to do a moonsault from the top rope, a remarkable move for his size. But Lio Rush will distract him. With Bobby's complicity, Kevin finds himself upside down. We can see that his legs were still stuck on the ring corner post. Under the effect of his weight, he injures his left knee. He may have reported it to the referee, but that wasn't all for Owens. Even after the end of the match, Lashley will violently target Kevin's knee, not without consequences. Subsequently, he will have surgery on both legs. It shows us how wrestlers have to be careful when they execute the maneuvers by managing their weight correctly. An injury can happen even in the most random moment. We've all heard about the famous Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Mankind in 1998. It was a war that became legendary with Mankind's iconic falls. On that day, Mick Foley, the wrestler behind Mankind, pushed the limits of the pain that a man can bear. It's even a miracle that he made it out alive and still able to walk. As you can imagine, with violence like this, there were injuries. You may not have known it, but even The Undertaker had a serious ankle problem. However, this will not prevent him from climbing to the top of the cage. While officials wanted to take Foley away on a stretcher, the latter had returned after his first fall, determined to continue. After joining the dead man on the cage, he will take an absolutely devastating chokeslam through the structure. In his fall, Foley even hit the chair on the head. It will leave traces. He will not only have broken ribs, but also a tooth that will go through his lip in a visual that is shocking. For Mankind, the final result will be a concussion, a dislocated shoulder and jaw, broken ribs, internal bleeding, and that tooth. It was really hardcore, and we've rarely seen a superstar get so many injuries in the same fight. Once again, we can only be filled with admiration for Foley, who sacrificed himself physically for the fans. It is a match that impacted millions of people around the world. In wrestling, you have to know how to master the art of giving the impression you are hurting your opponent while secretly ensuring his safety. When a wrestler is not careful, he becomes a danger to his colleagues and problems can happen. In the case of Goldberg, one of wrestling's big names in the 90s, we could realize it. But he even injures himself. Of course, he was an intense and intimidating performer. But it has already happened that he is bleeding from the forehead even before his match starts because he had deliberately hit his head against a door. He is also responsible for the end of Bret Hart's career. Because of a poorly controlled kick, he injured the Canadian who had issues for years and who had to retire because of it. In World Championship Wrestling's Thunder Show in 1999, Goldberg was precisely tracking Bret Hart. There was a scene with a limousine. In a fit of rage, he will destroy it, but it didn't go as planned. By destroying one of the windows, he seriously injures his hand. What makes this incident even more unfortunate is that he was supposed to use a sledgehammer to shrivel up the vehicle. He can consider himself lucky that he didn't cut himself much more seriously because he could have lost the use of his hand. It really seems to be a recurrent thing for him to get injured on his own, since in 2019, it also happened in his match against The Undertaker. This confrontation is known to be an absolute disaster. On that day, Goldberg went too hard into the ring post, which opened his skull and caused him a concussion. He even almost killed The Undertaker. Working with Goldberg was definitely complicated. We can talk about an injury that is a little different from the others. As you may know, most wrestlers try hard to be muscular and tanned on television. Some go to tanning salons on a regular basis. It is obviously not in the ring, but the wrestlers can still have problems there. That's what happened to Alexa Bliss. It's 2023, and she had a spot on her face that was getting worse and worse. She will find out that it was actually skin cancer. The reason is directly related to this routine that wrestlers have of sunbathing in salons. Alexa will eventually get away with it, but her example shows us how wrestlers endanger their health even in the smallest details to entertain us. The New Day team is one of the funniest tag teams. Their very exotic universe offered fans many hilarious moments.
In the wake of Big E's birthday gift.
In March 2022, Big E, one of the members, will laugh much less on the other hand. We were on an episode of SmackDown. That night he was associated with his friend Kofi Kingston, and they faced Sheamus and Ridge Holland. A very precise maneuver will have disastrous consequences on Big E's career.
And now Ridge with a throw is on.
This belly-to-belly suplex from Holland on Big E will seriously injure his neck after a bad landing. In this move, he fractured 2 vertebrae, and in April 2024, he still couldn't resume his career. It's crazy to think that just 3 months before this serious injury, he was WWE champion in the peak of his career. It enables us to realize even more how hard it is to be a wrestler, physically and emotionally. And this was it for these most shocking injuries in pro wrestling. Seeing all these incidents, we notice how wrestlers put their lives on the line every match. Every second, if they are not careful, they may see their career go up in smoke. It may even be the fault of their colleague who wasn't careful enough. When we see the physical damage of their actions in the ring, we can only respect these athletes. They sacrifice their health to provide us with entertainment. This makes me offer you a debate. In your eyes, are there any measures that should be taken to protect wrestlers more? Come and give your opinion. It will be interesting to exchange our points of view in the comments. We can say that sports entertainment really is a crazy world. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay on the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?